An American county is an unappreciated part of government and geography. Bridging the gap between municipalities and states, it serves an important role and has one specific part that makes it even more fun. See, counties were left pretty much fully up to the states to create and run, meaning some places, like Iowa, went for a boring design, gridding out the entire state. And other places, specifically Virginia, created city counties, totally changing the look of their state map. It all just has to do with historic development and priorities for each state. Looking at Louisiana, it's an underrated option for one of the most unique states in the Union overall. The culture is like nowhere else, focusing on their French Cajun roots to create some of the really interesting oddities seen nowhere else. One of the biggest things affected by this is the state's county system, which is like no other in the US. So today we're going to talk about that. Before we get into it though, I wanted to shout out my merch store, beavergeography.shop. We have a new collection, the System Collection, available now with shirts, sweatshirts, and stickers, all focused on the interstate system. If you're a big fan of my channel and have interest in this type of thing, I think they're really high quality, affordable items, and I'm really proud of them. So please go check them out at beavergeography.shop, linked in the description. Thank you. Looking at Louisiana's county map, nothing stands out immediately. Sure, there's a lot of squiggly lines, but is this really all that different from most eastern states? No. Although there are some strange shapes if you look deeper, the focus is instead simply on the state's culture, as previously mentioned. See, Louisiana is extremely French in its history, from the day it became a thing. Previously, it was a French colony, with most of the focus on New Orleans. At the time, the Mississippi River was even more important than it is right now, which made the mouth one of the most useful places to control on the continent, deciding what comes in and what comes out of an entire portion of the country. France held on to this for a long time, and obviously we know about the Louisiana Purchase, but something happened prior to this that's worth mentioning. See, in 1755, Great Britain took over eastern Canada, with the provinces of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island becoming controlled by the Brits. This led to the expulsion of the Acadians, where around 15,000 residents of this region were forced to move to present-day Louisiana. These people are now known as Cajuns, which is short for Acadian somehow, bringing their culture with them. This culture involved a rural lifestyle, music, Catholicism, Mardi Gras, and obviously food like gumbo. So moving back to the Louisiana Purchase, the US took over this land and made it their mission to Americanize the current residents, but this just didn't fully work. Specifically with counties, their goal was to establish 72 unique counties in the state, but the people who lived there really just ignored the existence of these and decided to keep doing their own thing, which is where the idea of parishes come from. So this is why Louisiana has such a strange county system. They use parishes rather than counties, bringing up the question of what a parish is. Well, a parish comes from the Catholic faith, which obviously has importance in the state. In the 17 and 1800s, when this was decided, most of the people in the state were Catholic, meaning their main focus was on their church and their community more than anything else. Pretty much every town would have a Catholic church, and the people and community involved with each church was then called the parish. That's important to note, because it's not like churches were drawing borders and fighting each other over land or something. They simply had these parish communities that depended on where you went. New Iberia had a church, and Jeanerette had a church. And then your parish was pretty much just decided by which Sunday morning Knights of Columbus pancake breakfast you went to. So going back to the county map, since all of the importance was on the churches rather than the counties, they just went with what matters to them and decided on this system. Now that we know that, we get to present day and we ask why it even matters. And really, it doesn't. Parishes and counties are still run the same way and have the same rules and purposes. But that does not mean Louisiana doesn't have interesting oddities that come from this. First, let's look at St. Martin Parish in central Louisiana. Located along the west side of the Atchafalaya Basin, the county seat is St. Martinville, and the largest city is Breaux Bridge. But I'm ignoring the elephant in the room here, because the parish is discontiguous, being one of the only counties, or county equivalent in this case, that can say that. Basically, in the 1800s, it was fully connected, but Iberia Parish was then created, and they either didn't care if it was connected, or literally just forgot this fairly useless portion fully within the Atchafalaya Basin. It's basically entirely swamp, with just a tiny bit of development in the southern corner called Stevensville. It's just a really weird situation not seen anywhere else. Louisiana also has consolidated city parishes, which you gotta love. Orleans Parish is the exact same thing as the city of New Orleans, being a fairly large area that is obviously incredibly important. The state can just choose to do this as they see fit, and I think it kind of makes sense in this case. Finally, I see one more major part of this story, and it's actually incredibly important, and that's Louisiana's geography. The state deals with swamps and rivers more than nearly any other state, possibly challenged by Florida. This affects the look of the parish system, which has to work around the Mississippi River, the Red River, and swamps everywhere. There's the Atchafalaya Basin, one of the largest swamps in the U.S., the Manchac Swamp north of New Orleans, and then obviously the entire wetland region along the coastline, formed by sediment from the Mississippi River. You have parishes like Jefferson Parish, that's just this lanky little thing going all the way from Lake Pontchartrain down to the Gulf of Amera, Mexico, or whatever you want to call it. And at the southernmost point of this parish, it actually disconnects Grand Isle from Port Fortune, which I find very interesting since they're so connected to each other. You can't talk about Louisiana, though, without mentioning the coastal erosion scene throughout history. Just since 1984, the city has lost around 500 square miles of land to the Gulf. Just the Gulf. And this is centered in the area south and southeast of New Orleans, which is mostly wetlands. On top of that, in the past 100 years, it's lost 1,800 square miles of land. Plaquemine Parish has likely lost the most land of any, centered in this area north of Bohemia, where you can obviously see the difference over the past 50 years. Another parish with this issue would be St. Bernard Parish, which hugs the New Orleans metro, but dealt with some pretty hefty damage from Hurricane Katrina, which hit it pretty much directly and damaged most homes in the parish. Biloxi State Wildlife Management Area hasn't lost too much land, so it mostly is just in the cities. This geography and coastal erosion has affected the population of different parishes, the overall land of different parishes, and made the borders a lot more murky and confusing. Overall, though, it works similarly to the county system, and it more just has to do with how interesting of a state Louisiana is. There are normal rural counties in the north part of the state that you really wouldn't be able to differentiate from anywhere in the deep south, but when you get into the south part of the state, especially in places like the south central area, which had the highest population of Cajuns, things get fascinating as culture shifts and history changes. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week: Javier Campos, Luke Vlogs, Devontae, Underpass Official, The Autistic City Skylines Fan, Richard Horwell, Florida Jake, RFP Rail Fanning, Dutch Vanderland, James Cermak, Rob R, Big Basti, Jameson Headley, Colonel Potter, Eric Hare, Third JC17, Jerome McCall, The Baked Fruit, Andres Quintero, Jesse Cook, JL Enrigo, The Richard Laws, Alexander Lichko, Laura Halliday, Charles Watson, Aiden Cowles, The Happy Hodag, Grant Dickerson, Midwest Rail Fan, Mick Kastner, D, Stephen Phillips, CJ Brick, Resident Contrarian, Hadev the Wolf, Brock Sanders, Stephen Priestman, SB Wilder, Makita Martinoff, Kurt Ainsley, KMS162, Bryson, Rosebud 4, Dark Bird, Snyder Schwein, and Ryan Devins. I nailed that in one take, if anyone was wondering. If you want to become a member, the link is down in the description below. All this money goes straight into my savings account, so if you want to help me out as a person and you appreciate the content, this is the best way to do it. I appreciate every little bit that anyone can give. I promise it just goes into my future, so it goes into a good cause. We upload City Skylines videos every once in a while on this channel, and that's members only, so if you are interested in watching that series, this is the way to do it. Thank you all so much for all the support that you've shown to me. You guys have really changed my life.